So, Overwatch has been out for about 5 months now and has proven to be an incredibly fun and addicting game. To keep things interesting though, much like their previous titles, Blizzard are periodically releasing new content. So far we've seen new skins, emotes, and even a new map and character. Now, without a doubt, we'll see more of each of these, but one thing Blizzard hasn't gone into great detail about is new game modes. As it stands right now, we only have 4 in the form of Assault, Escort, Hybrid, where you do a bit of both, and Control. The inherent problem though is the inevitable balancing act Blizzard will have to go through when designing and even thinking up these new game modes. The adding of new heroes or even just tweaking existing ones messes with the meta enough I can't imagine what a new game mode might do. It's likely the reason we haven't seen things like Team Deathmatch or Capture the Flag variants. You'd have characters that are just likely never used, and while that might seem like the case now for some heroes, you can at least make an argument for each of them depending on the situation with the current game types. So that got me thinking about what modes could feasibly be added to the game, and I've come up with a few ideas. Now, full disclosure, I am not an expert in the area of game design in any way. It's entirely possible there are giant glaring flaws, and I'm sure viewers will point that out. I welcome your comments and would love the feedback. That being said, let's get into this. The initial idea I had for a game mode was one where it would basically be a mobile control point. What it would boil down to would be, I'm thinking, a ball or something that one team initially fights over and wins control of. But one team member then takes sole possession of this object and a faint ring appears around them, like say Zenyatta's ult. The ring moves as they do, and the more teammates that are inside the ring, the faster your percentage would charge. This would be so that your team's Tracer or Genji can't sneak in, grab the object in question, and off to some obscure part of the map and grind out percentage while the rest of your team just slugs it out. I think this idea could pose an interesting dynamic. It would encourage teamwork but also require fluidity so that you aren't ulted to oblivion by some Zarya and Pharah combo right off the bat. The one problem I do see though is this potential issue with mobility. There could be a chance that the team gets into a very defensible position early on, and that's something that doesn't exactly exist in control point games. That could be something that comes down to map design though. But that was the genesis of this idea. Something more fluid. And this spun off into a similar but different enough game mode that I think has a lot of potential for upside, but also isn't quite as easy to predict how it might play out. The concept would be basically either 3 or 5 or 6, again, arbitrary objects, let's call them orbs for simplicity's sake, that would be fought over. One possibility is that 1 or 2 orbs are distributed at the beginning per team, limiting 1 per player, and the remainder then are neutral at the start and placed somewhere near the middle of the map. The game then proceeds with the goal being for your team to control all X number of orbs at the same time. If you're in possession of all of them, your percentage starts to tick up. I went with this system as opposed to say whoever has the majority because if one team kills it right off the bat, then it's possible the other team never has a chance to bounce back and can barely wrestle back 1 or 2 orbs, let alone a majority. But if you need all of them, in this case let's just say 3, then even if the opposing team gets the object in the center and wins the initial fight, if you're smart about who you give your orb to, there's still a chance that you can maybe make something happen. The counter-argument that at least I can think of for this is that there's a possibility this could lead to some very, very long games. So it might be good to have a time limit decide the match as opposed to percentage, or at the very least have some combo of the two where the highest percentage at the end wins. But I think this kind of game mode has the potential to be really fun and interesting. That decision of who to give the orb or orbs to at the beginning can add a new layer of strategy and meta to Overwatch. Would you give it to a tank who can take hits, or someone like Tracer or Reaper who might be able to get themselves out of a tight spot on their own? Thinking about this while also acknowledging that giving a player an orb would immediately put a target on their back, which could also shake up who your team goes after. Finally, unlike some more of the traditional game modes we discussed earlier, like Capture the Flag and Team Deathmatch, I don't think these game modes would necessarily discourage any hero choices. Especially if you have players on your team who won't primarily be holding the orb, then they're free to try and maybe fortify a potential hiding place or run interference while you get healed up and so on. I'm sure there are potential issues I'm not considering, especially with how ults could factor into all of this, but I think I've got at least a good kernel of a game mode here. If you guys have any suggestions for improvements to my idea, or your own game mode in mind, go ahead, leave it down in the comments. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video where I talk about updates to my idea and highlight some of yours. Until then, I'm Taserlad, this is On Geek, And thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe if you found this interesting and would like to see more. Leave your suggestions for On Geek down below and check out other episodes if you want to get an idea of the kind of things I cover.